Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with the New Theory podcast. Today, and again, all of our guests are special, but we have a very, very special guest today. Somebody who had the pleasure of working with, and we became fast friends. Rabbi Yitzi Weiner is on the podcast. Yitzi, how you doing today?
Doing fantastic, Tom. Thank you so much for the honor of hosting me.
It's our pleasure to have you. So him and I connected through an online resource. And I don't give too much of it away because he's going to get into it. This guy's a rock star. He writes for Forbes, HuffPo, any major periodical out there. He is an editorial genius, a PR genius, and so forth. But Yitzi, before we get into that, first let's talk about your formative years. Where did you grow up, and what makes you you?
It's a great question. So I grew up in California. For a little while, we lived in Santa Barbara, California. Then we lived in San Francisco, and then my family settled down in Los Angeles. At least I grew up in Los Angeles in the La Brea Hancock Park area. I was there for much of my childhood, and I grew up like seeing a celebrity wasn't like an uncommon thing. So I kind of had that in my genes a little bit.
Okay.
Then eventually I went to high school on the East Coast, and then I moved to Baltimore. I went to rabbinical school in Baltimore, and I got married there, and we had three children in Baltimore. And then in 2006, our family moved to the Boston area, to Sharon, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. And so I was there in the capacity as a rabbi,
okay.
But not like a rabbi who has a synagogue or a temple, rather like a teaching rabbi. And my mandate was to be able to teach in institutions or in synagogues across the denominational spectrum and try to find the commonality between all different the whole spectrum of the Jewish community. And that was really a fantastic experience. And that's really where I busted my chops in my marketing and my PR skills. So to the truth, even before I lived in Boston, I had some training in graphic design and web design. So I did have some kind of creative background. But basically, so once I was running this organization in Sharon, I did a ton of marketing, and I did media placements. And and thank God I was recognized as being talented, and like on the side I would do marketing gigs for people. Eventually, as my family grew, we moved back to Baltimore. So we moved back to Baltimore in I think it was 2015, and then as things progressed, I realized that it's time to start a PR firm.
Nice.
So at the beginning of this year. So I would say it's like close to a year now. I started a public relations firm. Now, honestly, when I started it, the name is called First Page Optimum, and that really connotes the idea of being on the first page, and optimum like a search engine optimization.
Correct.
I wanted to start. Basically, my main deal was we'll get onto the first page or nothing. And the business was focused primarily on SEO and on page ranking. And I use PR as an ancillary tool to assist SEO. But then eventually I realized that really the script should be reversed. That really PR is much more valuable than SEO. So SEO is a very mechanical thing, very tedious process. But PR I recognize has a much greater value. And so eventually I actually switched it on its head. We are basically a PR firm that specializes in page one rankings, but our main focus is PR. Now that's really been my main vertical now. But you mentioned you mentioned writing. So this is kind of what happened. Maybe this is a question that you'll be asking later, but I think I'm in a unique position where I'm kind of on both ends of the industry. So when I first started the PR firm, I recognized that certain industries are very good at can do well with an outbound marketing strategy. As I joke, I may have told this to you before. I joke, I can go door to door to sell a vacuum cleaner. That could work, but I can't go door to door to sell my dental services. that just doesn't work. It doesn't work to go,
Right.
So for certain industries, just don't work to go outbound. Also with PR, if I knock on your door and say, "Can I do your PR?" and if I send you email, "Can I do your PR?" Your first reaction is, "If this guy's a good PR person, why is he emailing me?" So I realized that the trick would be that basically, in order to get inbound leads, instead of just paying for ads, the trick would be recognized as being somebody who has strong media access. So then I worked hard at this. This goes back to your networking question. I found some writers for Huffington Post. I found writers for Forbes, and then a ton of people on LinkedIn. And I just look for everyone who's at Forbes on LinkedIn, and then I just asked them, what can I do to become a Forbes writer? Eventually, somebody helped me. Somebody made a connection, made the introduction for me, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And then from there, I started doing Huffington Post. Bottom line is that I became a writer, and my focus was primarily featuring people who have a high profile, who have a large following, people that have large social media followings or are heads of companies. And that way, I want to feature them, and they share it with their following. Perhaps millions of people will see it. So basically, I have a column featuring CEOs and celebrities, but pulling out my rabbi backgrounds, we try to pull out stories that are empowering and are actionable and that are meaningful. But the ancillary benefit is obviously that you raise my profile because I'm kind of getting wall-to-wall coverage as being connected to the media. So that's really helped my business to really blossom, thank God. I'm getting a ton of inbound leads now. People are looking for my PR services because they see that I have that connection. Now, obviously, I don't pay any money to go under my own byline, but because I am connected to so many different writers, and I know what they're working on, it's very easy for me to make a pitch. It's not just a blind pitch. The pitch is very, very warm, and it's very informed. So they got a very high success rate and be able to make a pitch to very, very premier media outlets.
Okay, so this is important because you shared a lot, and I want to just dissect it a little bit. So when we first spoke, and I wish we captured that conversation, but when we first spoke, you have an objective in your end. The people that typically reach out to you are people that are either kind of somewhat up and coming, and you kind of get them like where they are, and you bring them to a certain point. And that's when they can really start getting, paid to speak. That's when they can really start getting national exposure and so forth. So give us, without giving too much away, give us your formula. Give us the kind of customer that comes to you. What do you do for them specifically, and what have been some of your successes? Because PR is esoteric to some people. They can't really quantify it. But you're actually a little different where you're saying, hey, I'll guarantee these results. Here's what we're going to do. And give us, kind of make it less esoteric and give us an example or two of, who somebody came to you, what did you do, and what were the results around those successes?
Sure. Excellent question, Tom. You're absolutely right. Often, people before I explain what I do, when I say I have a PR firm, people often associate PR with like reputation management. Like this celebrity, got into a scandal and he had a PR firm to try to manage the crisis. That's people associate, for some reason, a lot of people associate PR as trying to manage your reputation, but that's not what I do at all. That's a different industry. What I do is primarily what people call media placements. Basically, marketing is very important. You have a product, but the main thing is how do you bring your product to market? So there are different ways to do that. So the easiest way, the simplest way is to pay for an advertisement. But the drawback of a paid advertisement is that anyone can pay for an advertisement. You don't have to be qualified or good. You could have a terrible product and still pay for an ad somewhere. So that's why about 15%. I saw 50% of people had give any credibility to an advertisement because they know it's paid media. In contrast, earned media, which is the technical term for getting mentioned in a newspaper or the media, earned media is something that's much more credible. They say that about 85% of people believe these stories because it's something that you have to be qualified for. Getting mentioned in a prominent paper like Forbes or The New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, it's kind of an inherent vetting process that goes for a report to be able to choose this is the feature. So what I do is my clients come to me and say, Yitzi, I want to get into a prominent media outlet. like Forbes or TechCrunch or on television. And what I do is I have a lot of connections to the media, people that are former producers or people that are actually journalists right now or producers right now, and I pitch them the story. So what I do is I help get a story or not a story. I help get you a mention of you in the media, or ideally to get a full feature of you in the media. That's what I do. My bread and butter is primarily digital media. It's not so. I do have some clients working getting television placements, and we do that. But right now, most of my clients actually are looking for digital outlets, and that's because that's like the most permanent. It's always there. Getting on television is great, but it's a flash in the pan. It appears and disappears, and people don't see it. But having an article in Forbes will be there for as long as Forbes exists. It'll be there, and it'll keep directing traffic to your site. So that's why people nowadays prefer that over like print. Even though being a Forbes magazine is very nice, it's wonderful, but it has a drawback in the sense that it has much more limited readership, and it's very temporary. So yeah, that's my main thing. So I do this all the time. People pitch me stories to get into Forbes, and I know a lot of writers there, and know what they're working on. And I say, hey Adam, what are you working on? So I'm working on these stories. And I say, here's a great business that will fit directly with what you're writing about. Are you interested? So if they can say yes, and they can say no. If he's interested, I have a very good connection.
Okay, I don't claim to be a PR guru, but I stumbled upon PR similar to how you have. And just for the listeners, there's three types of media, and Yitzi was pretty good about explaining earned media. There's earned media, which you earn, and again, you could either come up with some great idea and somebody picks it up, or you could also hire a publicist. Now, people think earned media is free. It's not. You typically would hire a publicist in order to get that media out there. There's paid media, which is about 15%, and that's simple, paid ads. And then there's owned media, which is content marketers that will create content on your own site, your own blog, right? But right now, the strongest by far is earned media. So here's the thing, and you may or may not correct me on this. To me, it's a time value proposition. I want to hire Yitzi when I have a little bit more money and less time. Why? I just can't keep pitching. I don't have the time. I don't have the ideas. I don't have the angles. I don't have the relationships. Or I don't hire Yitzi if, hey, you know what? I don't have a lot of money, but I can go around and reach out to 100 contributors. Is that fair to say?
Sure. So if I understand your question correctly, are you asking that can I do it myself if I have a lot of time and little money? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I want you to give. So here's what we'd like to do on the podcast. We'd like to give actionable items. Sure. And what I want to do is I want to walk away with the clear line and wall on when we should hire you, Yitzi, and when maybe we shouldn't.
Sure. That's a great question, Tom. Yes, so the answer is absolutely anybody can pitch a story to a journalist. Virtually all journalists are on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you see someone who writes in a magazine, you look them up on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and you can pitch to them, and you can pitch to them, no problem at all. But from my own experience, and this is the experience of many people, so the term public relations, right? Public relations connotes the idea that there's a relationship, right? And that's because a PR firm, right? What they do is they have relationships with journalists. So like anything, if I pitch a story to a journalist I never met, and the journalist's friend who they've been working with for years and who's given him or her tons of stories in the past pitches a story, the odds are that the second person will be much more successful than the first person. So the answer is you definitely could, but like everything, relationships are so important, are so critical because relationships have built-in cachet, built-in credibility. So that's why basically a PR firm basically is somebody who has those relationships who can make a pitch in a way that can be much more successful. So the answer is anyone can do it, anyone can pitch, but if you want to raise your chances of success, you want to find somebody that has a relationship.
Okay, now you bring a good point. if I'm here in New Jersey, right outside New York City. These traditional PR firms, which I think the traditional firms are in trouble because the whole $5,000 retainer, and the first thing out of their mouth is we don't guarantee results. But the first thing out of your mouth is we do guarantee results for a fraction of that price. How do you do it without giving too much of the secret sauce away?
It's really simple. I just had this discussion yesterday with another traditional publicist, as you aptly put it. Yeah. So the way it used to be, the way the media landscape clearly changed. Everyone agrees it changed, but I think some people just aren't fully aware of how it changed. So, I was speaking to a publicist, and she said, I could try to pitch a story, but there's never a guarantee because I never know if they'll take it. And to me, in my mind, I was thinking, I almost know for sure who's going to take it because I know what they're writing, and I know that they're going to like what I pitch, and I don't pitch it if I know they won't take it. So I think the answer is it really boils down to the difference between broadcast media and print media and digital media. So for example, in print media, they're probably 20 to that's large newsroom. I don't know exactly. Let's say between 20 and 50 people in a newsroom. But a place like Forbes, believe it or not, probably has close to 5,000 contributors. 5,000 contributors.
Wow.
Now, how is that? How do they afford? Because a fraction of the Forbes contributors are paid journalists, and the vast majority are business people that Forbes sees an interest in having these business people write for them because these business people have very good insight, very good experiences, very good networks, and basically these people write for free, but they write because they want the opportunity to be able to write for a publication like Forbes.
Correct.
So and many publications like that are like that as well. So once you realize that there's such an enormous amount of people that are writing, it just much easier to pitch a story successfully. Again, if you only have 20 people working in a desk and they're getting a zillion pitches, so your odds are 1 in 1,000. But if you have 5,000 writers and you make a pitch, then there's a much greater success. Now again, having a relationship is very critical, but the fact that the sheer numbers are so enormous nowadays, it makes it much more easier to land the placement in a digital outlet.
Okay, now, again, we like to keep it actionable. So for those still listening, and I always say about 18 minutes into it, if somebody's still interested, either they're very interested, they're stalkers, just kidding, or their family, right? No, but with that being said, I love it, right? But with that being said, we love it to be actionable, Yitzi, because you're an actionable guy, I'm an actionable guy. What are some of the tools that you use? Is it hustle muscle? Is it, reach out to a whole bunch of folks? And keep a database? Do you subscribe to, Cision? What are some of the actionable tools? Because what I want to do is I want somebody to really sit here and say, hey, this is something I can maybe do myself because they maybe can't afford us, right? And that's okay. Or say, screw this, I need to hire this guy. What are some of the tools that you use? And are they, soft costs with just time or hard costs where you do subscriptions? What are some of the tools that you use, tools of the trade?
Sure. So I have a shortcut, which is, I guess is a secret. I guess I'm spilling the beans, but I like you, Tom. I want to share my secret. There
you go.
So I actually have three verticals. My main vertical is my regular PR firm. Yeah. Standard. And again, but our distinction is that we, as you mentioned, we don't do a yearly retainer. We do pay per placement, and we give a guarantee. If you don't get it, you don't pay. So that's my main vertical. But also, what I do is I do PR for writers. As I mentioned, there are a ton of writers who are business people who are writers for premium magazines, and they would love to one day break a news story and become an expert and featured expert on NPR, or you're being invited to MSNBC or CNBC or Fox Business as an expert. So what I do is I work with my publicist team, and when I work with these writers, and I work with them for them to be able to write stories in a way that will actually break news and give them much greater much greater publicity.
Oh, wow.
So I have like I have a whole group. It's all a group of writers, and their goal is to eventually become a thought leader in their industry. So I basically I have like a built-in group of people that are writers, and they're always looking for stories, and so therefore it's easy for me to connect these writers to other businesses, other CEOs whose interests align very well. These writers are very interested in meeting CEOs and meeting celebrities. The celebrities are obviously very interested in speaking to these reporters, and therefore it's a win-win all across. It's a win-win. So therefore my secret is that I do PR for writers who are executives or business people whose goal is to become a thought leader. Therefore I have tremendous access to kind of the nitty-gritty of what they're working on.
So two questions. The first is, does the first group of people, now we're getting somewhere, because you're saying, hey, I get a whole bunch of people that we call pay for play, right? They pay you for submissions or for performance, which I love. But
just to clarify, the pay for play actually has a negative connotation.
Okay.
That's because it usually means paying the actual journalists for the story. So that's not illegal. It's not illegal to pay a journalist, hey, please talk about me. But it's unethical and it's unseemly, I think pay for play is generally referring to that. Pay for placements is very similar to is a term where you pay a PR. See, that's the funny thing. A journalist can't take money to write about a subject, but a PR person can take money to pitch a subject.
Correct.
It's kind of like a lobbyist and legislator. A legislator can't take money to make a law. That's corruption. Yeah. But a lobbyist who's a former legislator, who is buddies with the lawmakers, the lobbyist is allowed to take money to pitch a law to their buddy legislator.
Love it.
That's
all right. So I love it. So hold on. I think we're decoding it here. So the first group pays for placements, right? But then the second group, you're lifting up these thought leaders. But you could also pitch some of Group A to Group B because you already have a relationship with the people in Group B. They're happy to write for you, and in exchange, you work to grow their portfolios. Is that fair to say?
Right. So I do a ton of things for free. Again, I feature CEOs and celebrities on my own column absolutely for free. Again, I can't take money for that. I do that to raise my profile, as I mentioned, but also it makes the relationship, and I can introduce these people to my group of aspiring writers. Again, they're aspiring. They actually are writers for Forbes and very prominent media, but they don't have that access that I've been blessed to have. So I actually, in a certain sense, my column acts kind of like as a magnet for high-profile people, and then I'm able to introduce them to my group of aspiring thought leaders.
I love it. Now, I saw your dossier. You deal with some pretty serious people. So give us some of the names of people that you were proud to interview. And then how the hell did you get them? Because let's get to the networking part. So who were they and how did you get them? Because you got some pretty serious people.
Sure. So I think my first big break, the truth is I'm doing this type of writing probably less than 2 months. So it's pretty recent. I think my first break, my biggest break was the CEO of AirAsia, and then the same day with the the CPO of eBay.
Oh wow!
So those are my two big. And there, what I did was I used a service called Harrow. Harrow is called Help a Reporter Out.
Yep.
And what I did was I wrote, I'm going to be writing a story in Forbes magazine. Which is again very prominent outlet on what are the difference between the difference of management styles between Generation Xers and Millennials. And I wanted to speak to CEOs about that contrast. So it's kind of like a bit of like a high level piece, and therefore, and I didn't even realize this would happen, but it attracted a high level of response. So it's basically, I got pitched from some of the biggest PR firms in the world, and that's when I realized that the PR firms are really the like the storehouse of some of the biggest talent in the world. It's hard to reach these people, but their PR agents, the press agents, are being paid in some cases $100,000, $500,000 a year to get them press. And therefore, these people are very, very motivated to put their clients in front of the press. So that's when I realized that the best way to reach high-profile people is just straight up to reach out to the biggest PR firms and say, "Hey, I'm doing this article. Who in your firm would like to be featured?" And that's really the secret that I've been doing. Just reaching out to some of the biggest PR firms and saying, "I'm doing a story on CEOs. I'm doing a story on VC funders. I'm doing a story on successful founders or startups. Who are the most high-profile people that you have?" So that's one. That's kind of one of like a trick, not a trick, but one technique to be able to basically just reach out to the PR firms. And number two, I realized that also it depends on the story. See, people at that level, they don't only want to be featured; they want to have good press. It's easy to get bad press for some of them. They want to have good press. So if you put out a story that's like a feel-good story, like for example, I did a story called the story for entrepreneur. It wasn't for me, but it was from some people on our team. It's called CEOs Who Give Back. We wanted to feature 10 CEOs who give back they give back because of their success. And that's like a shoe-in for everyone wants to be in there because it puts you in a good light. And I knew it would attract high-level people. So yeah, that's what happened. So number two is to try to create a story that a CEO would want to be part of. Another thing I did was someone on our team wrote a piece for Harvard Business Review, and it was called "How These CEOs Create a Good Working Culture That Enhances Employee Retention." So again, we got really high-level people. We got some of the C-suite of I think it was L'Oreal and Adobe. Some really interesting people responded to that. So that's number two is the good story, and number three is that they also it's not enough that they want to be featured. They want to be featured in a diversity in a diverse set of outlets. So I've been blessed that I write for a bunch of different outlets. 12 outlets. So I one time I said, if anyone gets me someone like from the Fortune 100, I'll tell them I'll get them mentions in 10 magazines. And immediately after I put out that query, that source query, I got a response and somebody said, I will introduce you to Jamie Dimon from Chase, JP Morgan Chase,
wow.
and to Martha Stewart.
Wow.
So like basically it was kind of interesting how that offer of giving like a diverse set of magazines also was very attractive to people. So I think the bottom line is it boils down to seeing what they want and being able to provide that. And ultimately, everybody wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be admired. So it's ingrained human trait. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to be admired because we are admirable inherently. So that's why we want to be in the press, because that shows that we are admirable people.
Okay, now in terms of media and placements, again, you write for some of the biggest periodicals in the world, right? So one thing I like, and I told you this when we first spoke, is that you have a certain level of ethics, right? Where if you write for that periodical, you won't accept $1 because you keep it pure, but then yet can still get people into that periodical. So I love that. But you happen to be a person of higher moral standard. What are some of the red flags people should look out for when hiring a publicist or pay for placement publicist? Because it is still a little bit of a murky field. So maybe if you can give one or two red flags that you would advise somebody who's listening to look out for.
So I think I can talk about two things. So when it comes to hiring a publicist, so the honest truth is I don't really have that much experience in hiring a publicist, so I can't speak directly to that. But I think the main thing is you want to see their portfolio and see their track record, because it's easy to promise things. It happens to me all the time. People promise certain things, and then again, they may be very well-meaning and everything, and they're not trying to be deceitful, but it just doesn't work out. So number one is to see the track record, to see, you want to see the track record. Don't just go on promises. I think at least I can talk from my own experience. what's something that's come up a lot and kind of raises a lot of interesting ethical issues, which I'm sure happens all the time. But I think you need some kind of clarity. We need some kind of clarity over its ethics and maybe some of the laws about it. So, for example, I just got invited. So I got an email. They said we represent it's a PR firm that represented Disney resorts.
Oh wow!
They said they want to fly in my whole family into the Disney hotel, all expenses paid, everything. If I would agree to write about them, you know.
Oh wow!
So again, they weren't saying you have to write good things. Maybe I should write bad things, you know. But I'm sure that happens all the time, right? So is that ethical? You know, so obviously if I'm staying there, right, I have a very vested interest in having a good experience, and they want to make sure I have a good experience. So you know, if I accept the offer and I write about them, you know, how objective could that be? You know, and so that, I mean, I'm sure this happens all the time. But that, you know, what are the ethics about that? You know, so you know, we're having this ongoing discussion with my wife about it. I'm going to say no because the timing doesn't work out, because I haven't really clarified the ethics. I think that it'd be okay to do it. I think it'd be okay to do it ethically, as long as you straight out disclose in the beginning that I was invited in and this has been my experience, and you know, you should know that I was given this gift. I think if it's disclosed, then people are able to make their own decisions. But for example, it happens all the time that people offer to take me out or to give me samples of things, and again, they're doing it obviously because they want to buy my favor. You know, so when can you say no? When you're allowed to accept it? So that's kind of those are kind of like the red flags that I'm dealing with on my end.
Okay, now I love details. That's what makes this podcast special. Did they specify which outlet? You don't name the outlet. Which outlet they want you to write, or they just wanted you to write whatever outlet that you chose?
Interesting. I think they reached out to me thinking that I write for one.
Okay.
And they weren't aware that I write for a bunch. So again, they had one in mind.
Okay. So there are perks. So your model is, and I still need the third silo. The first is, hey, Yitzi, I need placements. You make them happen through relationships and so forth, through earned media. The second is you do thought leader development for writers, and their goal would be to be thought leaders in their space, and you help them with that. I don't believe you shared your third vertical. What is that?
Oh, right. Right. The third vertical is that basically the word got out that the Yitzi has a lot of connections to writers. So basically, I'm getting a ton of pitches from PR firms. So usually PR firms have to do a lot of cold pitches. But now they see that Yitzi has some pretty good connections. So I'm doing PR for the PR group. So it's kind of like wholesale PR.
Oh wow, no, and believe it or not, so you know, listen, I'll be very open. For New Theory, we do some horse trading, like meaning if a publicist reaches out to me, and there's a clear line between branded content. So if we get paid or we get samples, we have to by law through FTC, disclose that, which we do. However, if it's earned media, you know, it is appropriate to say, hey, this makes it in as editorial, but hey, in exchange, I would like to get this person, you know, on as a podcast. Now, would you consider a podcast? I think you'd like it. I think you'd do well with it. Have you considered that medium, or is that something you haven't considered?
Yeah, it's a great point. So actually, we're actually starting that.
Awesome.
You know, because I'm blessed to write for like these opinion outlets. So in a lot of them, you can actually embed multimedia. So you can embed audio or embed video. So, for example, I'm starting a series.
Oh, you're cutting out a bit, Yitzi. Hey, buddy, you cut out a second.
Okay, is it good now?
Much better. We go live at tape, so we probably lost about 3 seconds, but continue. So you were saying that they accept multimedia, and then that's where I lost you. Right.
So we're starting a series now with either with Huffington Post or with TechCrunch. We're going to interview VC funders, and basically ask them what are the 5 things that they need to see before they invest, or what are the 5 mistakes that founders commonly make. but then after we do that interview, like a text interview, we'll have my colleague Cooper Harris. She's a fantastic interviewer and also a tech celebrity herself and a former actress. But she's going to actually do a video interview with these VCs. So basically, we're actually going to be embedding not only audio but also video inside the article. So the answer is we're doing that as well. But for sure, I'd love to do more of that. And many of the people in my leadership cohort also are very interested, very very keen on doing podcasts. They each want to focus on different verticals. But again, I've been blessed that I could actually connect some of my guests from my interviews. I could actually connect them to my leadership group to actually interview these same guests. So I think we could actually have like a really cool pipeline of very high profile guests for our podcast.
All right, so you just jogged something that came up. Do of any of the outlets that the 12 that you belong to, do they accept, like if you do a podcast or you do an audio interview, do they accept multimedia, any of the 12 as far as you know, or do you need special permission?
Right, it's an excellent question. So most of them do straight out. They have their own multimedia, their own podcast, and their own video. My swim lane, as Forbes calls it, is primarily more business advice. I'm not a reporter. I'm a business person who's a contributor. So in that case, what we could do is you could link to audio or link to video. You can put a link into it. So again, in my columns in Forbes, I could just put a link. But let's say in Huffington Post or some of the others, Thrive Global, for example, there you could actually embed the video directly, embed the audio directly. So it really depends on the outlet, and to what degree it'll be like overtly embedded, or will it just be a link?
That is absolutely beautiful. Yitzi, I had 15 minutes and we're 37 in, so I could probably go on for a lot longer. How can people find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Rabbi Weiner. That's Rabbi Weiner. You can find me on Facebook at Yitzi Weiner, and my business the website is firstpageoptimum.com. You just type in Yitzi Weiner, I think it'll come up. I think you'll hit some of the outlets.
Now, did you one last question before we conclude? Did you walk away wholly from the SEO business, or do you do that as kind of an ancillary service now?
So we do it. We totally do it. I would say 90% of my clients now are primarily for PR, but we definitely do it. Honestly, now in the past, I'd actually be much more intimately involved. I do a lot of the nitty gritty work. Now I have a contractor that I work with very closely that does it. So in many cases, I actually contracted to a specialized agency that does that.
Beautiful. Now you know what? And I have another question. I was going to conclude, but I have another question. Because I'm in a similar space. We I think overlap about 80%. The reason why I don't want to just jump into wholehearted PR, because number one is I don't want to be a regular publicist. I know you don't either. Getting that huge retainer, not giving promises, and being full of you know what, right? So we don't we don't want that. But we're pay for placement guys. You shake our hand, look us in the eye, we'll perform. So I'm with you on that, right? But from a business model perspective, although the retainers are less, SEO is recurring. How do you stay afloat with these kind of one-offs or these, selected retainers that stop? What do you do? Do you get a lot of repeat clients? Do you need a lot of inbound? Because I'm scared of that model a little bit. I might get a great package to sell you, but what would you say? Okay, so let me dummy it down for the listeners. Of the people that sign up for a package, how many of them renew? And then second, do you need a ton of inbound because you walked away from recurring revenue? So if you could answer those two questions.
Sure. It's an excellent question. So the truth is, many industries are able to survive on inbound clients without necessarily recurring fees. I pay my accountants every year. I pay him, I don't know, whatever, $1,000 or $800 every year. and I don't have like a contract with him, but I come back because I like him. I come back to him every year. So similar thing also happens with PR, that they don't, they don't come every month, but they'll come back. So in my case, yeah, I've just been blessed that I have a lot of inbounds, that I can continue with inbounds, and I know where to find leads. I have some pretty good lead gen tools that are able to help me. But I think this leads to your initial point with this connection between digital marketing and public relations. I agree with you 100%. The way I see it is, PR is kind of like a pitch. Media placement is a pitch, but it's not going to close. But things like PPC, Facebook ads, or direct marketing, those are actually more of a closer. So I think that you need to have both. I think if you only rely on earned media, you're going to be missing out on the ability to close a deal that some of the new marketing tools have. So that's why I think it's important to have a combination of both.
That's a great point. And we'll put some links to some of your articles. And Mr. Rabbi Yitzi Weiner, thank you for being on the New Theory podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Tom. You're an awesome guy. Tom?
Okay.